good evening, class, and welcome to another module. This is module 3 of our training program. And in this module, we'll be talking about the world of emails and email service and learn everything we can about how emails work. So, if you are ready, let's get right into the lesson. I'm going to share my screen and we will get right into it. All right, so welcome back to class. This is module 3, lesson 8 of our web masterclass. And in this class, we are going to delve into the world of emails and learn about email service and how it works. Now, are all email addresses at yahoo.com or at gmail.com? How do big companies set up their own email addresses, like customer care at mtn.com or info at company.com? How do they do that? For decades now, web hosting servers have also been serving as email servers, making it possible for website owners to create unlimited email addresses at their own domain.com. These email servers connect with other email servers around the world and transmit messages with their incoming mail servers and outgoing mail servers. The incoming and outgoing servers have protocols such as POP3, IMAP, and SMTP. Email client software such as Microsoft Outlook and webmail systems from third-party business email service providers like Google Workspace and Microsoft 365 allow companies to send, receive, and access electronic mails. All together, setting the platforms that are only configured by the professionals known as webmasters. In this module, we are going to cover email service and how emails work online, how emails operate in general. We are going to look at the technology behind emails and see how we can apply this to our training program and how emails can also be provided as services to companies. This course is going to be very interesting and we have a whole lot to learn. So I want to let you understand that the more you learn, the more you earn. If you want to earn more, it means you need to learn more. If your knowledge is not enough, this means it's going to affect your earning ability. And so let's get some new information today. Let's learn new things today. Today, we are going to be hearing new terms. We are going to be talking about new systems and new tools all together. This is going to build your experience and make you better than you were yesterday. And as you are gaining more knowledge, it is going to influence what you can learn in future and how much you earn as a professional. So We are going to get into it, and this is module 3, like I mentioned, and this module 3 is going to run for 2 days, and after that, we'll move on to module 4, website designing. In this particular lesson, we'll spend time talking about email servers, especially how the incoming mail server works and the outgoing mail server works. We'll spend time talking about 3 very popular protocols in the world of emails: SMTP, POP3, and IMAP. And we'll talk about an application called Webmail, and then other applications that we call email clients. Tomorrow, we'll delve into email service providers like Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace. And we will also look at how to configure email clients to connect to any email server in the world. The information you are going to receive today is new, very educative, and is going to add more value to you. And so if you are ready, I'm going to play 2 short clips, and after those clips, we will begin the lesson.
IMAP and POP3. Just what is the difference between Internet Message Access Protocol and Post Office Protocol when it comes to your email? If you want to know about IMAP versus POP3, have I got some information for you. The experts at Brightbox Solutions created Help Desk Premier and know how to answer technical questions of all kinds, like IMAP versus POP3. This video has the scoop. Let's watch.
IMAP stands for Internet Message Access Protocol, and POP stands for Post Office Protocol. Both of these protocols are used for email retrieval purposes. Specifically, they process the transfer of email messages from the server to an email client. The POP email retrieval process goes like this. When you click on the Receive option in your email client, it will connect to your remote email server. It'll retrieve all mail and store it locally as new mail, and it'll also delete those mails from the server. The exception to this is if the email client is configured to keep mail on server, in which case the client will just disconnect. The IMAP email retrieval process goes like this. First, when you click the Receive option, the email client will connect to the remote email server. It then pulls the user-requested content and caches it locally. Then it disconnects from the server. There are several differences between IMAP and POP. The two protocols generally operate on different ports. Essentially, POP is a one-way communication path, whereas IMAP offers two-way synchronization between server and client. POP is sufficient if you're accessing your mail using only one device, such as your PC. IMAP is a protocol of choice if you need to access your email from multiple locations, for example, both from your office workstation and your notebook or tablet. So, what are the pros and cons? The advantages of POP. POP will download emails without leaving copies of them on your server. This keeps the space used on the email server low. The other advantage is that mail is stored locally and is always accessible even without an internet connection. A connection will only be needed when sending and receiving emails. Now, the disadvantages of POP are, since there's no remote server copy, if data is lost from the location where the email was downloaded, no email recovery option will be available and all your email will be gone. If you intend to use a single email account configured with POP, but want to use multiple email clients on multiple devices, some emails will be missed, since there's no synchronization between server and the devices or clients. Now let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of IMAP. IMAP is often preferred in many cases. In the IMAP protocol, emails are stored on the remote server and therefore are accessible from multiple different locations. IMAP can take a little time to download and synchronize emails from some remote servers, but it's a flexible, more reliable, and more complete email retrieval method compared to POP.
Now you know. Next time you have technical questions, find easy answers with us and share us with your friends.
Hi there. In this video, you'll learn what SMTP is and how it works. SMTP stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. While POP and IMAP are protocols that allow you to retrieve email from a mail server, SMTP is the protocol that allows you to send email to a mail server. Specifically, the SMTP protocol is used to send email from an email client to your email provider's mail server and to send email between two mail servers on the internet. When you use a free email provider, your email address uses their domain name, and in turn, they allow you to use their email servers. If you use their webmail site to read and send email, they handle the email server settings that direct your incoming and outgoing emails. However, if you want to use a local email client like MS Outlook, Apple Mail, or Mozilla Thunderbird, you'll need to enter your email provider's incoming and outgoing mail server settings when you set up your client. The incoming server setting tells the email client where it can retrieve your email from, and the outgoing mail server setting tells the email client where it can send your email to. The outgoing server setting is also known as the SMTP server setting. Let's focus on the send mail process and role SMTP servers play in it. Meet Maggie. Her email address is maggie@yahoo.com. Though Maggie is using Yahoo as her free email service provider, she likes to use the email client Microsoft Outlook for composing, reading, and sending her email. To make sure Outlook can communicate with Yahoo's mail servers, she entered Yahoo's email server settings when she configured MS Outlook. Maggie writes an email to her friend Rob using MS Outlook. When she clicks Send, MS Outlook sends Rob's email address, her email address, and the body of the message to Yahoo's SMTP server. Upon receipt, the Yahoo SMTP server breaks Rob's email address into two parts: the recipient ID, or what displays in front of the @ sign, and the domain name gmail.com, or what displays after the @ sign. The Yahoo SMTP server then goes out to the internet and, through a series of server conversations, locates the SMTP server for the domain name gmail.com. The Yahoo SMTP server passes Maggie's email to Gmail's SMTP server. Once Maggie's email arrives at Gmail's SMTP server, it remains there until Rob logs into his Gmail account and retrieves the email. Let's recap. SMTP is the protocol that allows you to send emails from an email client to a mail server. Once on a sender's outgoing email server, SMTP uses the domain name in an email address to locate the recipient's email server, where the email remains until the recipient receives it.
All right. There has been a number of tech revolutions in the world. In the early part of the 20th century, these machines called computers were introduced, and it shocked a lot of people. For the first time, we had a machine that could make predictions and perform massive calculations. People saw this giant system as a new device that is coming to change a lot in the world. Those days, computers were so large and they could fill an entire large room. Sometimes computers in the first generation were so large that they could fill even stadiums. Later on, we had the second generations of computers, which were much smaller and better in size. Smaller in size and better in terms of processing. And the computers became better and better. Later in the third generation of computers became much more smaller with the introduction of integrated circuits. And so computers were being made to become smaller and more powerful. Then came the fourth generation, where personal computers were introduced and individuals could buy computers, and computers went everywhere. People could afford these machines, and these machines started driving a revolution in the whole wide world. It was amazing. what started in the fourth generation of computers by the introduction of what is called a microprocessor. After that, we've had series of technologies that have driven a lot of change in the world, especially in the field of tech. There was a time we had the introduction of what is called a word processor. The word processor was such a revolution that caused a lot of change in the whole world. And a lot of businesses, a lot of organizations, and a lot of individuals bought computers because of word processing. Word processing was such a solution to a lot of problems in the world in those days. Because before the time of word processing, companies had to prepare all their documents with the typewriter. The typewriter was very difficult to operate because if you needed multiple copies of your documents, you had to create each one of them manually. If you needed to create 1,000 examination papers for 1,000 students, you had to create each one manually. With a typewriter, you couldn't save your work. You had to do it over and over and over again. With a typewriter, if you make a spelling mistake, that's it. You have to start all over again. You can't create copies, you can't save, you can't do so many things, and it was so hard. But that is all people had. And so when the word processor came, it made preparing documents so easy that it brought a lot of solutions to the world. Microsoft Word came and became the leading word processor above all the word processors that we had previously. So Microsoft Word up to today has been the top and number one word processor in the world. Later on, we had another revolution came, and that was the time of email. Email came to change a whole lot, just like word processors came to change the world. Email also brought a revolution because you no longer had to ship your messages, your mails. You no longer had to send your mails overseas for it to take days. In just minutes, you can send mails and documents across the world. So email was such a massive solution to the world. There are certain things that have come that have really been the main reason for change. Social media came, and social media has changed the world. It has dictated how things are done. And today we have AI. AI is a new revolution. AI is going to change the world, has already changed the world. Now, companies still depend on emails heavily. Maybe as an individual, you may not send a lot of emails, but companies still depend heavily on emails. So these emails that we use, how does it work? Who are the professionals behind emails? Who are those who create emails? Who are those who make emails? How do we have emails? Emails are created and managed by webmasters, people like you and I who create websites, who set up servers, people who put websites online for companies. We are the ones who handle emails. We create them, we configure them, and we understand how they really work. to the users, all they do is to type a message, provide an address, hit send, and the mail is gone. They don't have any other knowledge. And so in this particular training, our job is to go behind the scenes and look beyond what the world knows about emails and understand the technology behind emails and how emails work behind the scenes, the networking behind it, the configurations behind it, the technologies behind it, the protocols that allow the exchange to work. As tech people, we know more than what the world knows. And that is what we are going to cover in the next 2 days. First of all, we have to understand that the web hosting server that we set up performs 3 major functions. This is the first thing we need to understand. So right now, almost everyone in this class has a web hosting account. That server that is keeping your website and your hosting account up performs 3 major functions. First, it functions as what we call a file server. As a file server, after you create your website, you move the files onto the file server. Yesterday, we were able to upload our files onto the server. The section of the file of the server that handles your files allows you to upload your files, like the index file, your about us file, your contact file, your images, your CSS file. Yesterday, we handled these files. The part of the server that allows us to upload these files, we call the file server. The file server works with a protocol called FTP that allows you to upload your files onto that server. FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol, and it has a port number, port 21. With this, we can put our files online with ease. You need to understand that that same server also functions as a database server. There is a section of the server that handles databases. We have not yet dealt with databases, but then when it's time to delve into databases, we are going to be working on the same server at a different section with a different port number, with different protocols. We are going to handle databases. The same server does that. Sometimes in large setups like clustered hosting setups, we can choose to dedicate a server to function only as a database server. And we can choose to dedicate a server to function only as a file server. And then we have the mirror servers that will load the website with a load balancer in the cluster. Although this is possible, the understanding that you need to have at this point is that the same web server that was set up for you, that same server is designed to be a file server, a database server, and that same server also functions as an email server. That same server we are talking about is what is responsible for transmitting emails online. Anytime we send emails, what we don't know is that it is servers that are communicating among themselves. Look at Bob here, sending an email to Alex over here. You can see 2 servers in the middle. Bob thinks that his machine is what is sending the email, but he doesn't know that he has a server that is talking to another server that is providing service to Alice. Bob is at gmail.com, so he's working with a Gmail server. Whenever he sends a mail, the mail goes through the Gmail server and does not contact Alice at all, but looks for the address of the recipient and finds out the domain name in that address. If it is discovered to be a yahoo.com domain, then they will look for the Yahoo server responsible and deliver the message onto the Yahoo server. So you can see that a Gmail server has just communicated with a Yahoo server. When Alice comes to check her messages, Alice will contact the Yahoo server and retrieve her messages. So emails happen with what we call server-to-server communication. This is the foundation of our understanding. And the main points here are that number one, the same hosting server is the same server responsible for your files, your databases, and your emails. The next thing to understand about this is that the email server, now I'm zooming in to the email server. The email server performs two major functions. The email server functions as an incoming server and an outgoing server. Wait a minute. We said the same server works as a file server, a database server, email server. Let's put the file server and the database server aside, and let's focus on the email server. Focusing on the email server, we are learning that the email server performs two functions. The email server has two main functions. Every email server does what we call sending and receiving. Those are the two functions of the email server: sending messages or mails and receiving mails. The section or the function of the server that sends messages is referred to technically as the outgoing server, or you can say the outgoing mail server. And the section of the server for receiving emails is referred to as the incoming server, or what we call incoming mail server. If you can get this understanding, then you have completed the first step in this particular training. Knowing that we use email servers and they have the incoming mail server and the outgoing mail server. We are going to spend our time and talk about these two servers. Again, the knowledge that we have as tech people goes beyond the level of abstraction that ordinary computer users have. So we go into the incoming server, the outgoing server, and the protocols they work with. If you can hear me, please type incoming mail server in the chat for me. Incoming mail server. Incoming mail server. Anybody who can hear me, please type incoming mail server. Thank you, Prosper. If you have done that, please type outgoing mail server. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So the rest of our training will be about these two servers and how they function. So let's take a look at them. To talk about them properly, we are going to talk about the protocols they work with. So I'm going to talk about three protocols, and these three protocols will lay the foundation for everything that you will ever do when it comes to working with mail servers. All right. There are three common protocols used to deliver emails over the internet. These protocols are called SMTP, or Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. We have POP3, or Post Office Protocol. Then we have Internet Message Access Protocol, or IMAP. Wait a minute. Do we have other protocols that are used to communicate online? Yes, we have a protocol called HTTP. I believe you've heard of HTTP. Who can tell me what HTTP stands for? HTTP. HTTP. HTTP stands for, I'm waiting for the first person to post. And HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. You have to understand that anytime we talk about networking, anytime we talk about computers exchanging information, anytime we talk about computers talking to each other, you have to understand that the term we use that explains their medium of communication is the term protocol. These protocols are a set of rules for communication. And so any type of computer communication or networking, there are certain protocols that they use for that communication to be possible. For example, whenever a web browser is communicating with a web server to display web pages, the protocol used is HTTP. HTTP is a very clear protocol that allows web browsers to communicate with web servers, to send GET requests, and to display web pages. When you are sending files to servers, you use a file transfer protocol. It's a different protocol. This time, when emails are being transported or being transferred, we are still having server-to-server communication, and there are different protocols that handle emails. Maybe this is the first time you are encountering these protocols, but these protocols are used for email communications. The first one is called SMTP, or the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. Then we have the Post Office Protocol version 3. And then we have the Internet Message Access Protocol, IMAP. With these three, we can clearly understand the outgoing mail server and the incoming mail server. Let's talk about the first one, SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. SMTP is one of my favorite protocols because it's so simple to understand. And inside the name, it says mail transfer. And it's so simple. So it is a simple mail transfer protocol. This is a very interesting protocol, and it does something very, very specific. Anytime a web server wants to deliver a message, an email, it has one guy that it sends. What do I mean by that? Okay. Anytime a company wants to, most companies have some delivery guys, okay? And anytime they want to deliver certain things, they give it to those delivery guys and they go and they deliver those things. When it comes to how the internet operates, the vast internet we learned about, anytime an email is moving from one server to another server, there is one guy that is responsible. That guy is called SMTP. The job of SMTP is to deliver emails. That's all it does. Anytime somebody wants to send an email, for example, when you look at this diagram here, anytime somebody types an email and you hit send, what you don't know is that you are sending SMTP. SMTP is a protocol that will take your message, take the delivery address, and send a message through the outgoing server to the internet and find the server of the recipient and drop the message on the recipient server. So the job of the SMTP is to send messages. Already, we talked about the two functions of the email server. We said it has an incoming mail server and it has an outgoing mail server. The outgoing mail server has one protocol that it works with. The outgoing server is what is responsible for sending messages out. And it sends messages out through the one protocol that it works with. Maybe when you do further studies, you will learn that under this particular protocol, there may be a number of processes, but that has nothing to do with what we are learning tonight. The outgoing mail server works with one protocol. That protocol's job is to deliver messages. It is designed to deliver emails. And so it will go and look for the server of the recipient and drop the mail there, and the job is done. This tells you a lot as well, because if you look at this diagram here, you are going to learn that whenever you receive a mail, the mail doesn't really come to you directly. The mail is sent to your server. Your server has an incoming mail server that receives emails. And so from the sender and the sender's outgoing server, the mail comes to your incoming server. Your incoming server receives the mail. So far, we have mentioned the SMTP protocol, and the SMTP is a protocol that works with the outgoing server. So out of the three protocols that I mentioned, the SMTP is for the outgoing mail server, and its job is to deliver the mails. In some countries, they have physical mailboxes in their homes that are usually put outside the house. I'm just picturing one right now. There is a mailbox outside the house. Wait a minute. When somebody sends you a letter or a mail, there is a postman or a mailman who will come, whether you see him or not, and drop the mail in your mailbox. The postman will not really look for you to give you the mail in person. That is a different thing altogether. But when it comes to mails, they will drop the mail in your mailbox outside your house or at your post office. And their job is done. And so when it comes to delivering mails, there are two processes involved. One from the sender that goes through the postman into your mailbox. One process has just ended. So that postman that we are talking about is called SMTP. So SMTP stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. It is an email protocol used for sending and delivering email messages from a client to a server. By a client, we are talking about the sender, not the person, but his device. Not the device alone, but the application he used to send the mail. So once he types the mail, it goes to the server of the recipient. Anytime we talk about protocols, there is a follow-up thing that is called port numbers. In the world of networking, we have a lot of protocols that do different things. And anytime we talk about protocols, we usually talk about port numbers. For example, if you go and check, you realize that HTTP, the protocol, has a port number. Anytime you are talking about networking or cloud and they mention a protocol, the accompanying question that you should be expecting should be port numbers. So HTTP has a port number. You can find out. FTP, when we mention FTP, FTP has a port number. Who knows the port number of FTP, the file transfer protocol? FTP, we've talked about it over and over in this class. It's port 21. Thank you, Prosper. Port 21. All right. So SMTP also has a port number 25. The port numbers, I'm not going to dwell on them too much right now, but when it comes to configuring email clients, there are going to be things that we will talk about automatically because they are also used for the configuration. Now, SMTP, when it is over SSL technology, it has a port number 465. And when it is used over TLS, it has a port number 587. So when we get to configuration, you realize that if you choose SSL, you need to input port number 465. If you choose TLS, you enter port number 587. These are the security layers that are attached to the protocol to allow the messages to go over an encrypted layer. All the protocols and the port numbers we have talked about before, you will realize that anytime they are over SSL, the port number changes. All right. Before I started this particular lecture, I mentioned that to the ordinary email user, they have no business talking about what goes on behind the scenes. But as a tech professional, you have every business to understand what goes behind the scenes. When we talk about emails, we cannot do without SMTP because SMTP is the protocol responsible for delivering all the mails that we send each and every day. And SMTP is a protocol used by the outgoing mail server. So we have talked about the outgoing mail server, and we have discussed the function of the outgoing mail server, that its job is to send or deliver emails. And it does that through a protocol SMTP. Maybe in your next interview, you are going to be asked about this protocol. For you to be a cloud professional, a cyber professional, or even a data scientist, you are required to know these things. Today, you have an understanding of the outgoing server and the SMTP protocol. We'll visit the port numbers again and you see how it works. I like the idea that when a mail is sent, it goes through the first process of the message leaving the sender through a postman into the mailbox of the recipient. The mail is not directly given to the recipient, but the mail is kept in the mailbox. In this case, in the incoming server. So this will lead us right into what we call the incoming mail server. But again, the outgoing mail server handles all email deliveries. The outgoing mail server handles all email deliveries. There's a mistake here, so let's take it that way. All the email delivery process, transferring them from your clients or your webmail to another server. That's what we have mentioned. Now, let's talk about the incoming server. The incoming server over here, you can see it work. The incoming server. You can see the function of the incoming server. The incoming server is a server that stores emails and then sends it to your inbox when you request for it. It may also be referred to as a POP3, or IMAP server. All right. Now, the second process when it comes to dealing with emails is when we check our mailbox. So let's assume the recipient in his house waking up early in the morning and going to the mailbox outside the house to check. This completes the second process. What was the first process? The first process was that the postman came to drop the mail in the mailbox outside. Process 1 ends. Process 2 is that the recipient will go and check their mailbox to see if they have a mail. This is the exact architecture used for emails over the internet. So when the internet was being set up and the mail routing architecture was being drawn, they use that same process. So what happens is that anytime you receive a mail, the mail is actually stored on your incoming server. And your mail client, or you, the recipient, you go to your incoming server to retrieve the mail onto your email client or the device you are using or the application you are using. We'll talk more about that. This is where the second process takes place. And this is really, really important. In the second process here, there are two protocols that does the job. You can see from this picture here that there are two protocols outside here. One is called POP3 or POP, and one is called IMAP. Both of these two protocols are called the mail retrieval protocols. They are used to retrieve emails from the incoming server to the recipient. That is how they work. They retrieve mails from the incoming mail server to the recipient's email client. I'll spend some time and talk to you about these two protocols, because these two protocols here make it very clear and very easy for us to learn and understand what we are treating. Again, to understand what goes on behind the scenes, this is how it works. There is a client, and this client here, we are referring to the application that you use to read your mails. That application is configured to talk to a server, because whenever a mail is being sent to you, the mail is dropped on the server. So through the configuration between the client and the server, the client can retrieve the mail from the server into that application for you to read. So what I'm talking about right now is when you are reading the messages. There is a special communication between the software you are using to read and the server. And there are two protocols that are used. Not at the same time, but either of them is used based on who did the configuration. Whenever we are setting up emails for our clients, we are responsible for doing the configuration. And this configuration is a training on its own that you need to go through to understand how it works. This goes beyond checking emails with email address and password. This has very, very little to do with that. This is about how you connect to an email server to retrieve mails. The same way you have learned how to connect to a web server to upload files, there is a way to connect to an email server to retrieve mails. Anytime you are connecting to an email server, you are going to be asked one question. That question is, what protocol would you want to use for the email retrieval process? And you are going to be given two options, POP or IMAP. Wait a minute. Your job here is to understand the meaning of POP and how it functions, and IMAP and how it functions. To make this much more clear, let me go to Paint and do some simple illustration here for us to see. I've already explained to you that a sender can type a message on their machine. Let me put the sender here. Whenever they type their message, it goes through their server. The message goes through their server. This is what happens. The message goes through their server. When the message goes through their server, the message through SMTP looks for the server of the recipient. Let me put that somewhere here. So what happens is that the message is sent to this server right here. Now, right from here all the way to here, there is one protocol that did the job. I'm going to be asking you very soon. So this is process one. The second process is when the recipient opens their machine to read their message. So over here, we have the sender, and over here, we have the recipient. Over here, we have the outgoing server, and over here, we have the incoming server. What you have to understand at this point is this. All emails are dropped on the server. All emails are dropped on the server. So what I'm doing here to tell you something. That whenever a mail is sent to you, the mail is dropped on your server. And if you have worked on emails for some time, you are also going to realize that emails are just files. Emails are just files. The same way we have come to understand that websites are files, emails are files. And I've dealt with those files. Sometimes when we are backing up an email, we back up the files of the email. And when it's done properly, you go to the email client or the email software to check the mail, and you were able to move the mails. Wow. It is interesting to know that emails are just files. So the files are sent onto this server like this through SMTP. So let me type here. I'm going to ask you, but I've said it for you. The protocol that does this job is called SMTP. Who knows what SMTP stands for? Who can tell us what SMTP stands for? I'm sure someone knows. What does SMTP stand for? Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. I told you that it's so simple. So, thank you. So SMTP is responsible for doing this. Over here, we have the outgoing server. And over here, we have the incoming server. The outgoing server can also be referred to as the outgoing mail server, and the incoming server also referred to as the incoming mail server. I'm so excited that as tech people, we are learning more. Because the more you learn, the more you understand. Please, do you see what I'm drawing on the screen? All right. Thank you. Now, over here, we have the sender who sends the email with his email client. Before we end the lesson, I'm going to talk to you about email clients. And the recipient who receives the email with their email client. Now, I mentioned that process 1 ends when the mail lands on the incoming server. That is process 1. Process 2 is when the recipient wants to check their mail. This is a different process altogether. If somebody wants to check their mail, they connect to their server to check their mail. And so they can check their mail with what is called POP or IMAP. They can check their mail with POP or IMAP. We have POP version 3, so we call it POP 3. And we also have IMAP. All right. So the next part of this lecture is to find out what happens in process 2. What happens when the recipient wants to retrieve their mails? Because they have the mails on their server. All right. So what happens when the recipient wants to retrieve their mail? If the recipient is ready to retrieve the mails, this is what happens. They need to use either POP3 or IMAP. Let's talk about POP3 first before we talk about IMAP. POP3 is very easy to understand. It stands for Post Office Protocol version 3, sometimes referred to as just POP. Most of the time, when you are doing your configuration, you are going to see POP. After today, when you see POP, you go like, I know what it means. It is a simple, standardized method of retrieving email messages. I don't like the word delivering. I like the word retrieving. When a user connects to the incoming mail server to retrieve emails, that's the word. The messages are downloaded from the mail server to the user's hard disk. Let me explain. What we are going to do now is to find out the behavior or the characteristics of POP. Then we will find out the characteristics of IMAP. We will analyze their advantages and disadvantages. Then we will be properly informed to understand when we want to use POP or IMAP. Look at the diagram here, and you can see that the incoming mail server is here. And POP works between the incoming mail server and the client. And POP is a method of retrieving the mail. Again, you don't retrieve the mail with both POP and IMAP. You choose one to set up your client. So how does POP work? Let me tell you a little bit about POP before we read more about it. And after that, we will look at the advantages and disadvantages. Okay. I'm now explaining something to you. I've been using POP for a long time. So let me tell you how it works from experience. If you use POP to connect to your incoming server to retrieve your mail, now these things we are saying, they may sound like, since when did we start configuring things to email servers? As a tech person, you will do it. Maybe you've been using emails for a long time and you've never heard that we do these things. There is a configuration behind the scenes before the mails can flow. And when we are dealing with setting up mails, we do these things. Whenever I use POP, this is what happens. POP is a good retrieval protocol. What it does is that it goes onto the server, it picks up the messages, and watch this, it moves the messages to the local computer of the recipient. This is how POP works. Notice the word I used. It moves the messages. Just like when you go to your mailbox to remove the letters. Early in the morning, you can go outside your house, open the mailbox. If you find mails in your mailbox, what do? You remove them and you take them home. I told you this is exactly how it was designed for emails. The same process. So you move the mails from the mailbox. So what are we noticing? The first thing we are noticing is that the mails are no longer in the incoming server. The mails are gone. Number two, the mails are stored locally on the computer of the recipient, locally. When we just read, we heard something about hard disk. Yes, the mails are moved to the hard disk drive or the storage, SSD or whatever storage the recipient is using. This can be a good thing or a bad thing. What is a good thing about this? This is good because after downloading the messages, you no longer require internet connection to be able to read all the messages, because the way POP works is to download. The keyword is download. It downloads the messages and deletes them from the server and stores the messages locally. And so you can read all your messages without internet connection. Let me ask you something. You have been using WhatsApp for some time. When you turn on your data on your phone, this is what happens. If you have new messages, all of a sudden the new messages are sent to your phone. Now, let's assume after the messages are sent to you and you start reading them, you turn off your data. After turning off your data, are you able to access the old messages you have received? The ones that just came in and the messages you received the whole day? Even yesterday, are you able to access your messages without internet connection? Yes. Yvonne says, yeah, that is true, because you have to understand that WhatsApp downloads. It uses a protocol that downloads the messages to your device. Let me tell you, even if there are pictures in the messages, the pictures will be stored on your device. Your phone will have the pictures. If you check your gallery, the pictures will be in your gallery. Have you ever seen anything like that? Of course, even the videos will be downloaded to your device. And so WhatsApp uses a protocol that downloads the messages onto your device. This means that without internet connection, you can still check your old messages. After I explain the two protocols, I'm going to ask you whether WhatsApp uses POP3 or IMAP. I like the way WhatsApp uses two ticks to explain the two processes I just talked about. You see, with WhatsApp, tick 1 means this. Tick 1 means that the message has left the sender, has gone through the WhatsApp service, and has delivered the message to the server. This tick 1. Let me do that again. When you get tick 1, it means the message has gone onto the server. When you see tick 1 or 1 tick, it means the message has gone onto the incoming server of the recipient. The message is here. What's the meaning of tick 2? Tick 2 means the message has now moved to the user or the recipient. So anytime you see the second tick, it means that the recipient has downloaded the message or has received the message. Whether he has opened it or not, that is not the point. The point is that the message has gone to their device. The message is on their phone now. That's the second tick. So I told you that there are two processes that happens during mail transfer. There is a sending process and there is a retrieval process. So we have seen how POP3 works. It is just what I told you. POP3 will go to the mailbox or the incoming server and download the message from the server onto your device. That's how it works. And by downloading, we mean that the messages will be moved from the server. All right. This is a good advantage because we can check all our messages without internet. But let's look at something else. Let's say this your machine that you use to download the messages is at the office and you have your messages all right with POP3. And the messages are no longer on the server. If let's say you go home and you decide to use your phone, a new device, and you want to access the mails, let me tell you what happens. Your phone also goes to the server. The question here is this. Are we going to, is the phone going to get any messages? Yes or no? No. Why? Because the messages were downloaded onto the first device. So when it comes to POP3, this is where we start seeing some disadvantages. And because of this, sometimes people change their mind not to use POP, but look into IMAP. Because when we started explaining POP, POP sounded to be very good. I had two questions to ask. The first question was about WhatsApp. The second question is this. If you have a popular video on YouTube or any platform that you want to watch the video over and over and over and over and over again, maybe it's a movie or something that you will need over and over and over. Question, are you going to download it? Assuming it's possible to download, are you going to download it to your device and watch it offline anytime you need it? Or are you going to keep it online and use internet to watch it anytime you want to watch it? What will you do? It's my second question. I wanted to ask this after the WhatsApp. Okay, so a lot of people will download it. It makes sense to download it. Assuming it's possible and it's free to download, it makes sense. A lot of people will download it. Someone will also keep it online. It's their preference. So Pop used the download method. And Pop said that when there is a mail, let's download it onto the device. So Pop always downloads. It's just like visiting the post box and moving the messages. Once you move the messages, if someone else comes to the same box, will they see the messages? Let's say there are letters in the mailbox. You go outside the house, you move them and you take them home. Maybe someone else who doesn't know you have come for the messages also goes to the mailbox. Would the person find those messages that you moved? No. So this is how Pop was designed. Only the first guy gets the messages. But now, when it comes to the devices we use, this may be a disadvantage because you may be outside the office and you may want to check your mails on your phone and you don't have it. Number two, you may even go to a cafe or use someone else's computer and you want to check your mail outside the office with a different machine. But because of the Pop configuration, you go onto the server and you don't get anything. It's empty. And so you have been given two protocols to choose from. So after we look into the IMAP, we are going to find out which one of them is more interesting or more beneficial. Which one of them would you choose? Then later I'll add some information to Pop to tell you some extra settings that have been introduced. After I tell you that, you can still decide which one to use. And when you start using it and start doing configurations in real life, you are going to understand how they really function. And when you see how they are functioning, you yourself, you know that this client was configured with Pop and this one was configured with IMAP. Who can tell me what Pop stands for? After you tell me that, Pop, what does it stand for? Post Office Protocol. That's so beautiful. You see? So far, you have been able to learn about SMTP. You've been able to learn about POP. You've learned about the incoming mail server and the outgoing mail server. That means a lot. That is good tech knowledge. And so I'm going to talk about the IMAP, and then after that, we will compare their advantages and disadvantages and know which one to choose. Now, over here, you can see the advantages and disadvantages of POP3. That is what I have explained already. With POP3, emails are downloaded. The keyword is to download to the user's computer. The messages can be read offline. Opening attachments is quick and easy as they are downloaded. One good thing is that there is less server storage space required. Why is this? Because all the time the server is free. All the emails are stored on local machines. The server is always free. The server doesn't accumulate because of POP, the messages are always moved from the server. So even if you have small storage on the server is always free. It is very popular and easy to configure and use. One main disadvantage is that the emails cannot be accessed from other machines. That is one. We'll think about the rest later on. But let's look at the second protocol called the Internet Message Access Protocol. This protocol was named to tell you that it is used to access messages. In your examination, you are going to be asked to give us the full meaning of what IMAP stands for. And you are going to be given possible options like Internet Mail Access Protocol and Internet Message Access Protocol. Don't be confused. The right answer is Internet Message Access Protocol. When it comes to SMTP, it also has an M. The SMTP M is Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. That one too, you are going to be tricked and you are going to be given Simple Message Access Protocol or Simple Message Transfer Protocol. But the correct one is Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. And over here, we have Internet Message Access Protocol. Don't be confused. I know you will remember this. In your next interview, you may be asked about IMAP. From today, you know what IMAP is because IMAP is an email protocol. When it comes to the world of emails, we have protocols that we use in the world of emails. They are the three protocols I've talked to you about. As you advance in tech and you start dealing with servers and configurations, you are always going to come across these three. SMTP, we know what it does. POP3, we know what it does. And IMAP. It is an email protocol that keeps your email in sync across multiple devices and lets you access your messages from any computer or mobile device. This is the second explanation of IMAP. The first explanation is that IMAP is used as a mail retrieval protocol used by the recipient's email client to fetch or retrieve messages from the email server. Let's end it there. I don't know why I explained these things like this. That is fine. So IMAP is just like POP3, just that it works in a different way. With IMAP, we always use the term synchronize or sync. This term sync, we talk about it all the time when we are using IMAP. Now, unlike POP3, that will download a message onto one device, IMAP doesn't download the message. IMAP only allows you to get the headers of the message. And it will do what is called caching. It will cache the headers of the message. By the headers, I mean the subject, the date, and allow you to see it in your inbox. But IMAP maintains a strong link with the server. This means that when you see the message in your inbox and you click on it, it needs internet access or an internet connection to log on to the server in real time for you to read the message. Right now, I'm explaining how IMAP works already. So with IMAP, the messages do not leave the server. The messages are always on the server. And so when a second device comes in, the second device also configured to the same server will also see the same messages. Because the messages are still on the server. And one thing is that whatever device one does is updated on the server and device 2 sees it immediately. For example, if you are using IMAP and a message is read by this device, when you log on to with the next device, you are going to be told that this message has been read. When you go to your mailbox, you know the messages that have been read and the messages that have not been read. Even when you are open to the message, your inbox on device 2 and device 1 accesses the box at the same time and reads one message, it will update here because they are synchronized. Device 3 can also connect and have access to the same messages at the same time. Let me quickly use another diagram to explain IMAP, and then we will let me come here, and the messages that were downloaded with IMAP doesn't download. The messages will stay here. So because of this, device 1 can access the message, device 2 can access the message, device 3 can also access the message. This has advantages and disadvantages. With this method, no matter where you are, you can still log on to the server and retrieve your messages because they are not deleted. They are not deleted. So I'll be asking you a simple question. And the question is, which one of the two protocols would you like to use to configure your emails? Which one of the two protocols would you like to use? Someone will go for POP3 and someone else will go for IMAP. I'm sure you all have your reasons. Now that you know the differences, you can make an informed decision. After the short break, I'm going to tell you about POP version 3 and some new settings that come with POP version 3. And I'm going to ask you again whether you still choose IMAP or you will now use POP3. And so at this point, we are going to take a short break, not a commercial break, but an ergonomic stretch break, and we will return in 10 minutes. After that, we will finalize the differences between POP3 and IMAP, and then we will move on to the last part of our lecture for today. I hope you are still learning, and I'll meet you after the break. All right, so welcome back from the short commercial break. There's a commercial break. From the short stretch break, we are back and we want to finish up this particular lesson. So what I'm going to do is to play a short clip, the same clip we watched again. And this time I want us to listen very well to understand the difference between IMAP and POP3. After that, we will continue with the rest of the lesson.
IMAP and POP3. Just what is the difference between Internet Message Access Protocol and Post Office Protocol when it comes to your email? If you want to know about IMAP versus POP3, have I got some information for you. The experts at Brightbox Solutions created Help Desk Premier and know how to answer technical questions of all kinds, like IMAP versus POP3. This video has the scoop. Let's watch.
IMAP stands for Internet Message Access Protocol, and POP stands for Post Office Protocol. Both of these protocols are used for email retrieval purposes. Specifically, they process the transfer of email messages from the server to an email client. The POP email retrieval process goes like this. When you click on the Receive option in your email client, it will connect to your remote email server. It'll retrieve all mail and store it locally as new mail, and it'll also delete those mails from the server. The exception to this is if the email client is configured to keep mail on server, in which case the client will just disconnect. The IMAP email retrieval process goes like this. First, when you click the Receive option, the email client will connect to the remote email server. It then pulls the user-requested content and caches it locally. Then it disconnects from the server. There are several differences between IMAP and POP. The two protocols generally operate on different ports. Essentially, POP is a one-way communication path, whereas IMAP offers two-way synchronization between server and client. POP is sufficient if you're accessing your mail using only one device, such as your PC. IMAP is a protocol of choice if you need to access your email from multiple locations, for example, both from your office workstation and your notebook or tablet. So, what are the pros and cons? The advantages of POP. POP will download emails without leaving copies of them on your server. This keeps the space used on the email server low. The other advantage is that mail is stored locally and is always accessible even without an internet connection. A connection will only be needed when sending and receiving emails. Now, the disadvantages of POP are, since there's no remote server copy, if data is lost from the location where the email was downloaded, no email recovery option will be available and all your email will be gone. If you intend to use a single email account configured with POP, but want to use multiple email clients on multiple devices, some emails will be missed, since there's no synchronization between server and the devices or clients. Now let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of IMAP. IMAP is often preferred in many cases. In the IMAP protocol, emails are stored on the remote server and therefore are accessible from multiple different locations. IMAP can take a little time to download and synchronize emails from some remote servers, but it's a flexible, more reliable, and more complete email retrieval method compared to POP.
Now you know. Next time you have technical questions, find easy answers with us and share us with your friends.
Sometimes the way some people talk about these things, they tend to sound biased because of their own experience, okay? So I'm not in agreement that the video says IMAP is more preferred, all right? Because it depends on what you need it for. What is important is to understand the differences and know what you want to use for your configuration. All right, let's do a very quick recap on POP. When it comes to POP3, we have learned that POP3 moves the messages from the server to the local device. So the messages are on that device. And you can access your messages without internet. That is one good advantage. Number two, another advantage is that your server is always free. Very good advantage. And this is how the POP process works. Anytime you want to retrieve your message, your email client, which we'll be talking about shortly, connects to your remote server, which is your incoming mail server, and retrieves the mail. After retrieving it, it stores the mail locally. It stores the mail actually on your device. Then it will delete it from the server. Actually, when you are using WhatsApp, your messages are stored on your device. Sometimes WhatsApp asks you to do backup. I don't know if you have seen the backup of your WhatsApp messages before. Sometimes you open your WhatsApp at 2 a.m. and WhatsApp tells you that we are doing a backup. This means they are backing up the messages that are on your device somewhere for you. Because if a backup is not done and you lose that phone, all your messages are going to go with it. It is possible to connect with a different phone, which is the same number if you confirm it. But what is going to happen is that the old messages will not be there. If you are part of groups, you may be added to the group, but you don't have access to the old messages. Your old messages are gone. Only new messages will come in. But then if you did backup, you can restore the backup onto the new phone and your messages can load on the new phone as well. So this explains the process of POP3. Also with your laptop, when your mails are on your laptop and you don't back up and something happens to the laptop, the emails are gone. So this is one disadvantage when it comes to POP. Now, looking at this process that we are looking at over here, POP3 provides one setting that allows you to skip the last option. This last option, instead of deleting from the server, you can choose to go through the whole process, but when you get here, you skip it or you disconnect. So with that setting, you can use POP to download your mail and not leave it and not delete it from the server. POP3 allows us to do that now. And one thing it does is that sometimes it can ask you to set that it should delete in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or never delete. So that option is possible. Because of that, you can still use POP and have it on your server. This means that when another device connects to the server, they will also download the messages. But then you still have to understand that it will also use POP, and so each device will also do their own download. If you are using POP, you can access your messages without internet. The only time you need internet is when you are ready to send a new message, because if you don't connect, you can't push a message out. And also when you want to check if there is a new message on the server. So if you want to check if there's a new message, then you connect your internet. But apart from that, the messages that have been downloaded, you can access them without internet. Just like WhatsApp. You can access all your old messages, but when you are ready to send a new message, you know that if you don't connect, you can't send. And if there's a new message, you need to connect to check if you have new messages. If you use another device to connect to POP and you download the messages onto the new device, what is going to happen is that the new device will also download it, but there is no synchronization between the two. This means if you read a message on device 1, There's no way device 2 is going to know that you have read another message. What I'm talking about here is that there is no synchronization between the devices. Whatever you do on device 1 stays on device 1, even though the same messages are on device 2, because they all downloaded their own copies. So you can think about that and understand. When it comes to IMAP, IMAP uses a different process. With IMAP, it will connect to the remote server, that's the incoming server, retrieve the content, and it will cache it locally. So this one, instead of storage, it does what we call caching. Usually it will cache the headers of the email, but then when you click on it to read, you need to connect to the internet before you can read, because it needs to connect to the server. If you don't connect to the server, some of the cache versions may show, some of the text may show, but you can't see the full mail. You can only see the full mail if you have an internet connection. So with this one, after caching, it is connected from the server. So it always has a message on the server. With IMAP, all your devices can talk to the server at the same time. Whatever device 1 does on the server is updated. So device 2 knows, device 3 also knows, because they are all synchronized. This tells us the advantages and disadvantages. And now you can choose which one you want to use. And at this point, you will know their behaviors well. So if you use IMAP and the way they are behaving, you can tell. If you use POP3 you can tell. The next thing to look at right now is about how the messages are read. In computer networking, there are several layers that control the transfer of information. The last layer is called the application layer. And the application layer here is where the user will interact with his clients. And so as the emails are coming to us, we have gotten to the point where the user is ready to read the mail. We have gotten to the point where the user is now ready to read the mail. And what we are going to learn right now, before we close, is that if you want to read your mail, there is a software or an application that you use to read your mail. That application is called an email client. And this application, we are going to talk about 2 types of email clients. Please notice where we are. We've already talked about everything here. Now, the messages have been downloaded through POP or IMAP. We are going to talk about how the mails are read. In reading the mail by the user, the human being, they use an application. There are 2 types. One of them is a web-based email client. And the second one is a software application. Please listen to this. You can access your mail using a browser and a web-based email client. What I'm going to tell you is the name we give to the web-based email client. The web-based email client is referred to as a webmail. Webmail. Please type webmail in the chat for me. Webmail. So a webmail is a web-based email client that allows users to read their messages. It also allows them to send email through a web-based interface from a browser. So anytime we talk about webmail, we are talking about a browser. Question. Have you ever used a browser to check your mail before? Yes or no? I think the answer to that question is yes, because this evening you use a browser, you probably use a browser to check the mail to get a meeting link. I'm sure. Some people didn't use a browser. Like me, I didn't use a browser. I used a software application called Outlook, and I'll be talking about that. But right now, we are talking about checking your mail over a web browser through the HTTP protocol using a web application. The name of that web application is called Webmail. Now, when I asked you whether you've checked your mail using a browser before, you said yes. I'm sure the browser you used is probably the Gmail browser, or the application you used is the Gmail application over the web browser, or the Yahoo. I don't know if someone here is using Hotmail, but we have Yahoo Mail, we have Gmail. Now, those ones are so popular and we are all used to them. But the reason for this lesson is that when it comes to business email, we use different tools than what we are used to. On your web server, there is a tool called Webmail. This Webmail is what allows you to access your mail on your web server when you set up email for a company. I mentioned to you that companies do not operate at gmail.com. Companies do not operate at yahoo.com. Companies operate on their own emails at their domain.com. It's the same thing that Gmail did, it's the same thing that Yahoo did, just that on a larger scale. But every single company that has a website and a hosting server has what it takes to set up their own email. So very soon we will see how these emails are set up. And we have to understand that they can also check their mail. The question is, how do they check their mail? For example, if you are to set up a company now, are they going to check their mail on Gmail or Yahoo? How are they going to? We have a web-based application that we use and we give to our customers. It's called Webmail. That's the name. Under Webmail, there are 3 popular applications that you are allowed to use. Who can type the name of the one I have marked now? Who can type that one for me? The name of that one for me. I want to see if my marking is showing. Thank you. It's called HUD. HUD is one application or a tool we use to check our corporate mails over the browser. Another popular one is this one. Who can type this one as well? We use this to also access our mails over the browser. It's very popular, especially to those who run custom emails. You see, with this lesson, we are not focusing on free mails, we are focusing on custom mails. Roundcube is very, very popular. And the most popular of them, of the 3, is called Squirrel Mail. Please type Squirrel Mail in the chat for me. It is the most popular of these 3. And so with Squirrel Mail, we can easily access our web mails. This is going to open new doors to us because right now it is possible for all of us to have corporate emails. I want us to use somebody's account to do this demonstration. If Solomon is here, let's use midi.com.ng. The IP address of midi.com.ng is here. Please watch this. I gave you the port number to access WHM. Who can remember the port number that will lead you to WHM? Anybody? The port number for WHM. Who can remember it? Emmanuel knows it. It's not 286, Emmanuel. Who knows the port number? I'm sure Emmanuel still knows it. Yvonne got it. So watch what I'm going to do. Right now and right here, I'm going to go to the browser and type the IP colon 2086. When I hit enter, you are going to see that it is going to load the interface of WHM. This WHM is an application on the same server that operates on port 2086. If it is having SSL, it will operate on port 2087. Don't ever forget that. Also, with the same IP address, just by changing the port number, I can access a different application. If I enter port 2082, what is the name of the application I'm accessing? The name of the application I'm accessing is called cPanel. I like the way Emmanuel typed it and Oluwafemi. You see? So by accessing a different port, you are automatically accessing a new application on the same server. This is interesting because cPanel does a different job from WHM. Watch this. I'm going to show you a new one. On the same server, you can enter port 2095 and watch what is going to happen. There is another application that runs on port 2095. What is that application called? This is the first time I'm talking about this. What is the application called? The application is called Webmail. So voila. Now we know how to check the mails on our server. Very soon you are going to learn that your server produces a lot of mails. As a matter of fact, you are going to have the ability to create unlimited emails. You can create emails for all your staff members for free at no extra cost. At no extra cost. For free, completely free. This is not the same when you are hosting your mails on a third-party mail provider like Microsoft 365. With Microsoft 365, you pay for every single mail. So at Rita Africa, all our mails are at Microsoft 365. And every month, we pay either $12 per email, $12.5 per email. We have some packages for $22.5 per email. Another package for $8.5. Another package for $6.5. Just that it doesn't come with a lot of features. Tomorrow, we'll spend time talking about the third-party providers like Google Workspace and Microsoft 365, where you can decide not to use free mail, but set up a business mail on Microsoft 365. And now your business can operate the mails from Microsoft 365. Until you make that decision, what I'm telling you now is that your existing server already gives you access to unlimited emails at no extra cost. And the application we use to access our email, we call it Webmail. So if you have a client and you set up emails for them, you tell them to access their mail through Webmail. Don't give them the IP address and the port number. You can choose to tell them to use their domain name. So with this same domain name, midi.com.ng, you can type the domain name and say column 2080, 2095, and it will still work. This only works when the domain is properly resolved onto the server. He is having an issue right now. Because of this issue, the webmail is not loading. This is why it is not advisable to access your server with a domain name, because anytime there is an issue with the domain name, it affects the connection. Just now, I have seen why it didn't work. But then this also explains that as a tech person, if you are accessing your server, don't use your domain name. For your customer will not remember IP. So don't give IP to your customer. Give the domain name to your customer, because by the time you give a domain name to the customer, you have resolved the DNS issues. And so the name is properly connected to the server. So I made a mistake, and I used the opportunity to explain why you always need to use an IP. But then let's see if it will work this time. So because the domain doesn't have issues, you can also use a domain name with a port number to access your webmail, also to access your cPanel. The domain name is a mask for the IP address. I will not even advise you to give the port number to your clients, because they will not remember. It doesn't make sense for you to talk to a customer in a technical tone like that. So tell your customer to use MIDI, their own domain name, /webmail. Let's see if that will work. If you say /webmail, it will try and redirect and use SSL. And it will land on the same interface. This time, even better off, because it is running on SSL. New information. When webmail is running over SSL, you can see that the port number has changed from 2095 to what? Who can tell me what you see now? Thank you. So in this particular training, we have learned 8 very, very important port numbers. With the port numbers of SMTP, IMAP, and port 3, we will learn them automatically. Those ones you'll not even struggle. Please, anytime we talk about a protocol, it comes with an associated port number. In this training, I've given you the port number to WHM 2086, WHM over SSL 2087, cPanel 2082, cPanel over SSL 2083, FTP 21, FTP over SSL 22, and webmail 2095 and webmail over SSL 2096. You see, I don't memorize this because if you are in this field of work, you use it every day. I'm not trying to remember. I know them. I'm not trying to remember. Telling you this is very important because these 8 port numbers, you need to keep them in mind. Anytime there's a server issue, you know which port to open. All right. Now that your client has been able to open to webmail using their domain /webmail, now they can just log in. What should they use to log in? This means that you can create an email for them. I have used a login of MIDI to enter into their cPanel. If you log into your cPanel with the details you were given, you have access to this section called email. This is where emails are handled, and you can do a whole lot over here. This place right here is a lot of fun. The first thing I'm going to do here is to click on email accounts. And watch what I'm going to do here. When I go to email accounts, someone tells me, someone should tell me what I've highlighted now. What have I highlighted? If you can see my screen, tell me what I have highlighted. Wonderful. This means that you can create emails. This is good news. So I can click here and watch this. Wow. For the first time, I'm not seeing at gmail.com. I'm not seeing at yahoo.com. I'm seeing at my own domain.com. This means all I have to do is to come here and create my first email. I can't wait to do that. I'll just type info. That's all I'll type because at the domain is already here. I'm done. I just create a password for it. So I type a password I remember, or I generate a password. Remember, when you generate a password, make sure you copy the password you have generated so that you know how to use it next time. After doing this, I can go to edit settings. Then I can allocate quota or space for each email. Wow. You can create emails for all your staff members, and you can regulate the space you give to each staff member. However, email addresses like info@yourcompany.com, sales@yourcompany.com, marketing@yourcompany.com, support@yourcompany.com, the important emails is advisable to make them unlimited. Unlimited means they have access to use all the space the server provides. It doesn't mean they will never be full, but they are not limited. They will use space until the server itself is full. When I'm done with this, please watch this. As I'm speaking to you now, info@midi.com.gh does not exist. Does not exist. But right now, with a click of this button, the moment I click here, I'm going to ask all of you to send a quick mail to info@midi.com.gh, and let's see what will happen. Once I click here, see what happened. The mail has been created. Success, you created info@midi.com.gh. This is all you need to do to create email for all the companies in Nigeria and all the companies in Ghana and Uganda and South Africa and your country, Cameroon. There are companies looking for this solution. Oh, I know how to do it. All I need is to register a domain for them, set up hosting for them, and it's done. I go to the cPanel, I create all the emails for all the staff. I'm done. They pay for the service. They can pay monthly maintenance fee. They can pay yearly renewal fees. Of course, the renewal fee they will pay. This is business on its own. I'm telling you, this is business on its own. You can create custom emails, corporate emails for companies. Sometimes we call it business email. Sometimes we call it professional email. Sometimes we call it corporate email. Sometimes we call it custom email. This is business. You can create this for your clients. I ask you to send emails to this. This is business. Emmanuel knew that I was going to ask you to type it in the chat. I felt like asking you, Emmanuel, you're reading my mind. That's wonderful. I'll be happy to know that by the time we check this, someone has sent a mail. How do we check it? The same way. Okay, Solomon, you just came. We are using your domain name. The same way, watch this. You ask your client to access their mail like this. This is how you access it. info@midi.com.gh. Sorry, ng. Then you put the password here. Remember, I copied the password, log in, and with webmail, it worked. Wow. Now that I am in, this is what your clients will be seeing every day. And so they have to use one of the applications that I told you about. I gave you 3 applications. Who can remember the first one I gave you? I said the first one was called, or is called, who can remember the first one? The 3 applications I gave you for accessing your mail. You can see how we came through webmail. The first one is hot. And the third one, the most popular one, is called, who can remember the most popular one? The third one is called, the third one is called Squirrel Mail. Thank you, Ashinafi. The second one is Round Cube. You can see Round Cube here. You can check this for it to be automatic so that they don't come here and click again. But then the moment they click on Round Cube, they will start accessing their mail. So this is what we are talking about. This is webmail. And we are accessing the webmail or the email over the browser. This is webmail. Emails can also be accessed through an application, which we'll be talking about next, and then we'll close. You can see that this email was just created. You can see that Ezekiel Babayode has sent a mail. Prosper from Cameroon has also sent a mail. Just now, I think someone else should also send a mail, and let's see. Babayode, let's see what he said. He said, hello here. Okay. Imagine this email didn't exist, and all of a sudden it exists and it can receive mails already. Wow. This is fun. Let's see what Prosper said. He said, test. What are we testing? Hello, Midi. How are you today? Regards, Menja. That's beautiful. So you can see what is happening here. And there's one default mail that came from the server when we set it up. And it is allowing you, tomorrow we'll get into this, the configuration part. You see the web configuration, settings, this is what we'll be doing tomorrow. Anytime you do this work, you are going to be dealing with what we call incoming server, outgoing server. You are going to be dealing with port numbers. I told you that these things you are going to be doing them automatically. I love this. This course is so educative, and I'm so excited whenever I'm teaching these things. All right. So we have used webmail to access our mails that we just created. You can go back to the cPanel, go back to the same place, and create unlimited emails. The moment you create them, they will start working. You can put them on your business card and start giving to people. You can start sending messages and receiving messages. Another way to access your mail without a web browser is to use what we call an email client. An email client, or a desktop email client, or an email client refers to an application, a software that is installed on your computer, not accessed over a browser, but an application on its own that enables configurations for one or more email addresses to receive, read, allows you to compose, and to send emails. Any email client you are using, you are going to come across folders like this: inbox, sent, spam, trash of deleted items, drafts. These folders are very common. I hope you remember all of them. Then this compose, we use it when we want to compose a new mail. All these things are there. Now, this round cube that you are seeing here, a lot of companies are using it. What I'm telling you right now is that if you are to set up a company and they want to access their mail over the browser, they are going to use this. So a lot of companies depend on this to communicate. You can also choose to configure them onto an email client, which is an application like Outlook. Outlook is a very popular application for connecting to email servers to send and receive emails. You can connect Outlook to any email server in the world. You can connect any email client to any email server in the world if you know how to do the configuration. The configuration is what we'll be looking at tomorrow, and this is a vital part of this training. It provides a central interface for receiving, composing, and sending emails of configured email addresses. Sorry, Solomon. I'm going to ask you a question. When you install Outlook on your computer, or when you buy a new computer and there's Outlook on it already, that Outlook doesn't have your mails. You need to do some configuration. This configuration, there are some servers that their configurations are already done. All you have to do is to provide an email address and password. For example, if you are connecting to a Microsoft server or a Google server, you'll just be asked to put in email address and password and it will work. But when you are connecting to the server of a company you hosted a website for, it is not going to be that straightforward and that automatic. You are going to set it up manually by using the incoming server address, outgoing server address, the port numbers, and doing the configuration settings like we saw. This is what you do for your clients as part of the business of providing them with email. And anytime they have issue with it, they'll contact you again to come and solve it. Of course, at a fee. The question I want to ask is this. When you buy a new phone, a brand new phone, do you have an email app on the phone? Maybe the Gmail app or a mail app. Something like this mail app. Do you see it on the phone, a brand new phone? Do you see it on the phone? Yes, I got 1 yes. I got 2 yeses. I got 3 yeses. Yes, of course. My second question is, when you open that app, do you see your mails in it? After you pick the phone from the store and you open the app, do you see your mails in it? No. This means that these apps, they are designed for you to connect them to an email server. That is how they work. If you are able to connect them to the server, then the mails will flow through them. So the apps, they are just apps that already exist, like Outlook. Outlook was not created for one email server. You see, Gmail can choose to give you their own app. And so it works with Gmail alone, and they can use their own icon. But something like Outlook is not used for or tied to one email server. Outlook is a powerful application, an email client that you can connect to any server in this world, so long as you have the right details. The details you need are what I showed you previously. These are the details you need. The incoming server address, the outgoing server address. You need to make a decision to use IMAP or POP3. You need the username and password. You need the port numbers of IMAP or POP3, whichever one you chose. And you need the SMTP port number. With these details, you can connect Outlook to any server. And your job as a tech person and as an email service provider is to know how to do these configurations. So tomorrow, we talk about this configuration and we'll talk about third-party business email. After that, you have all the knowledge you need to set up mails for companies, create and manage the emails of all their staff, and to do business with email. This training allows you to understand what happens behind the scene and to gain in-depth knowledge into how the process works. This brings us to the end of today's lecture. We've been able to talk about the entire process of how emails move from server all the way to the client and all the protocols involved. We've been able to look at the email servers themselves. We've been able to look at the outgoing mail server, the incoming mail server. We've been able to look at the SMTP protocol, and we've looked at the POP3 and the IMAP protocol. All that we've talked about here, they are so important, and you need to remember them. If there's any part that you didn't get well, go over this video and listen again, learn again. Because in your next major interview, you are going to be asked this technical question: what is POP3? What is IMAP? What is SMTP? What is the incoming mail server and the outgoing mail server? You need to remember the exact definition to give. Not just from memory, but through experience. Everything I have taught you tonight, I can teach you everything the same way without looking on anything, because I've done all of these things by experience. And these drawings, I just drew them out of experience, because this is how it works. And this is how you are going to use them in the real world. So I want to thank you very much for joining the class tonight. Tomorrow, we will take the next lesson, and I'm going to see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful evening and have a blessed day tomorrow. Good night and bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir, for the lesson. That's where we draw the lesson on today's lesson. We continue tomorrow. And please note that tomorrow, Wednesday, we are having our industry expert session, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. So kindly take notes. So when we send the notification and the link, you do all to join. And then we continue our work tomorrow, God willing. Thank you very much for actively participating. And do have a wonderful evening and good night. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.